I think basically I want to do something anti-modernism. The goal is to let people feel more free. I feel my architecture always trying to be very natural and artistic. I want architecture to be more emotional, means I don't want building as a machine. I don't want to have a style, but I want to try something new every time. So I think architecture should do the same. They inviting people, so more. That's why it should also blend into the environment, not as a temple, but it's become more like a park. The sketch is about emotion, I would say. So before the sketch, you already have this image in your mind. I want each design process is a new journey, some adventure. I also think each place deserve a unique solution. I think in the future, technology should only serve people's emotion. It's not about competition of technology, faster, stronger. It's not about that. But sometimes you can use old technology, old material, sometimes new material, new technology, or you can combine them. But the goal is to create certain atmosphere. We think human is the center, and architecture serve people. So we build buildings and buildings and buildings. We forget about the spaces in between buildings. I never think I want to representing China because I think I could be one special or independent figure in China cultural landscape. You open the door, or you invite them to think more. I think that's my interest to do architecture, to get involved in other people's life. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the future architecture.
I want to show you just the fact that I'm surrounded by many of your books here. I have your one
Oh,
here. I
okay.
have another very heavy book with your project on the cover. And you might remember I interviewed you for this book, China Dialogues. And there is another book where I have many single Q&As, including one with you here.
Oh, this book, I've never seen this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You actually signed this page a few years ago in Venice. Also, I did an exhibition where you participated as one of the voices, and this has you on a bicycle in, in the installation that you did. When you speak about your architecture, you use words and phrases such as natural, emotional, free, uncertain, mysterious, undefined, vertical garden, building as a landscape. Every floor is different, never self-centered, mysterious, uncertainty, visualizing sound, architecture as a dialogue with the natural environment, and architecture should be alive.
Mm.
How else would you describe your work, and what kind of architecture do you try to achieve?
All of above. I, wa- I don't know. I think basically I want to do something anti-modernism. So, because I think modernism, I think some of the work I like, and I also understand, but I think is a too much order and control and to people, and sometimes it's too isolated from the environment. So I think it will be nicer to not consider buildings as isolated objects, but more blend into its surrounding. The context can be nature, can be also city, can be anything. Sometimes it's a no context. It's also sometimes you have a traditional context. You have old buildings. Sometimes it's more empty. That you have a very weak context. For example, if you what if you do something on Mars, for example, extreme example, that there's a color as a context, the light, the climate, you have to also consider. So the goal is to let people feel more free, more, when they're wandering inside building, outside the building, around the building. So their experience, their emotion is continuous. Um, the freedom, I think that's one goal. The second goal, I think I want architecture to be more emotional, means more showing how human behind the building. I'm not, I don't want building as a machine. It's too cold. You know, I think architecture become a media in between different people, like people understand other people, or they can understand the author, or they can understand the previous users, or people meet each other in architecture. So it's about the human. So I think, at least for myself, I want to, um, my work uh, show my emotion so people understand uh, how I observe that place, or that time, or that environment, so they could start their own imagination. I think that's give architecture more power to help people to observe their inner heart, and or imagine things.
And among the key influences on your work are drawings of animals and insects, as well as shrimps by this Chinese painter Qi Baishi that you
Yeah,
mentioned a number of times. If you could talk about that particular inspiration.
yeah, I like drawing animals. I don't know why. I also draw horses, tigers, all these animals. They're beautiful, but also they can move. They're alive, so they're not frozen. So I like that. Also, Qi Baishi, he's a famous because he made all these uh paintings more abstract. The way he draws shrimps and fish. He didn't draw water. He leave it a blank. He draw a small shrimp on a huge blank of white paper. And it didn't draw much, but you can imagine there's a big body of water, and there's a because your imagination. I think that's really powerful. Doing something abstract at the same time. You have you see the life. I don't know. It's it has a both quality. It's abstract, but you also see the actual shrimp. So I think architecture should do the same. You should architecture shouldn't let people feel confused. Sometimes the abstract art make people confused and they don't understand. So I think architecture shouldn't do that. Architecture should make people curious, or feel comfort, or feel surprised. They should feel something, and then they should um, start dive into their own imagination. Like, you open the door, or you invite them to think more. I think that's a good architecture. So I think it's exactly like Qi Baishi's painting did. You know, a kid can understand is a shrimp, is a but an adult can can imagine, like, can see a shrimp and no water, but they see the water. But where's the water? Yeah.
So in a way, it's kind of unfinished, undefined, and it invites all kinds of reinterpretations, right, in your own
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
Yes, I think somehow I feel that's a future architecture that you're inviting everyone to complete a work um, that you create something, making people curious and uh, and they complete um, uh, not telling people like what you have done because I think architecture, especially the cultural project, I do many museums, so I know sometimes museum trying to show they're they're very powerful. They have this and that, and the building sometimes also showing off like they're so powerful and um, yeah. So people go there, they feel they're small, they feel they don't know anything, and that you telling them things. Uh, but I think that even for the artwork as well, the narratives around the art piece is to help other people to tell their stories, not just telling them what they should think. So I think architecture should do the same. They inviting people, so more. That's why it should also blend into the environment, not as a temple, but it's become more like a park. So people like to come, and then they will find their own space, and then yeah, I think that's the future architecture.
Another major influence on you is coming from your encounters with Zaha Hadid, being her student, working for her. If you could talk a little bit about the lessons that you learned from her.
As our student, I find she was a more like artist. She 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 hates to repeat. I don't know. It seems sounds not right because she has a very strong style, but I can see her change because from the very beginning, her paintings, her first work at the fire station, and then later she started to have a three-dimensional curves and everything. At the beginning, it was like a sharp corners and like a pieces incomplete, but later more fluid and curvy. She tried to not repeat and change. And I was in charge of some competitions. I know she direct me to do something really not Zaha Hadid, like doing something really new to push the boundary. I think that's her excitement by doing architecture, like doing something different and not repeating. So I think that's a really that's my the influence to me, and that's also I admire and I something I want to do. Maybe that's why I don't also want to repeat. I don't want to have a style, but I want to try something new every time.
I want to ask you to elaborate some of your quotes. You said many of my projects are built more in opposition to their contexts.
Yeah, it depends on what's the context. I also I did uh opposition sometimes also means you complete the context. When everything look too similar or like a no direction, sometimes the crowd needs one direction or something. For example, the latest project we finished in Rotterdam is an addition to a old warehouse. So we did something like like a metal uh,
Tornado.
tornado. And it looks so different from older structure, but it complete the older structure it's a composition. Of course, they look different, but it become a whole one project. It make the old uh, complete, I think. So that's what I meant. But but at the same time, we're doing another project in Rome, in the traditional part of the city. All the surroundings are like old buildings, and so we did that project really carefully. You hardly can tell that's my project actually from the so you only see a quite a simple block, but when you go into the project, you find some detail. It's a something different. Yeah, but so I think this relationship is very dynamic. It's changing depending on this conversation, how this conversation goes. So um uh, but I think in most Chinese city, um when this is surrounding the context is too similar, they need identity. So 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 that requires uh, some pieces architecture become strong and telling the story. Yeah. So
I wonder if this tornado, this addition that you call a kind of completion of the building, if that came after many, many different schemes and versions, or did you see it right away?
that was the first reaction. The first reaction was a movement. We need something movement, both from the nature of the museum is about the migration and how people move in the history, also the time, it's a movement. Also from when you look at the old building, it's really heavy concrete space. So we need something bring, go through the roof and bring in natural light, everything. So to celebrating how people move in the space, to bring the movement. That was the first reaction. And then of course we did a different version of a tornado, but they all look like a tornado. They're trying to bring people beyond the roof and longing for the height and to look at the city. Yeah. So, but the the geometry, the material it has a contrast from the old warehouse. That was the first reaction.
You said nature can be artificial and buildings can be part of nature.
Yeah, yeah. That's I mentioned in the old Chinese architecture. Well, actually, architecture term in China was never about the building itself. So so it's always about the system. In Japan as well, I think in Japan, it's always nature and the building together. So the building, when you see the building has this deep roof and the columns and this outdoor indoor space under the roof, inside the column, but outdoor, and some passageway and some pavilions. All this space was designed for the environment, you know. So that means taking the space, living the space is a secondary. The priority is how people wandering in the nature, how people see the change of the seasons, the day and night, how people feel they're part of the nature. That was the first priority to build this kind of architecture. Even the courtyard house in the city, the same. They have a courtyard in the middle, have a trees and a season change. It's in the center. The building is just a boundary. The buildings are less important. So I think that's what I meant. The nature is very important. It's not only physical nature, the green. It's also about the time, the feeling, the emotion, the memory, the life, the family, the courtyard. You have families, kids, all these things in it. Uh, Um, and the architecture should serve that goal. Architecture should understand human is not the center. So building itself is not the center, but they're all about the conversation with the nature. So that's what I mean.
I'm really curious if you could talk about your design process. You said it is always very emotional, intuitive for you. You said you never start with a diagram. And I read that you don't use computers in the initial stages of the design. If you could speak about the design process and how do you start, and is it really just you or the team is helping you from the very beginning, or they are waiting for your initial steps?
I need to go to the place. I need to go to the site and then understand the place and the people, and then I will have a initial reaction. Sometimes that's really strong. The reaction is really strong. It's you know what you have to do. So and then you will come up with a sketch. So almost every project I start from sketch, and then I will let the team to develop that into computer model to make it more accurate. Work with the dimensions, all this. But it starts from really how to say the sketch is about emotion, I would say. So before the sketch, you already have this image in your mind, and there's uh, have you seen this Phoenix Museum sketch? That was a really
Yeah,
fun,
with the
a really,
bird.
yeah, that's a really funny, very simple sketch, but that was the first sketch, almost from the first visit to the site. So there's a long building and there's a tornado go through the roof. That was already there. Uh, so I was imagining some things.
And you
Oh,
didn't make any sketches before you went to the site?
no, no.
So you are trying to be very disciplined about this. You don't want to rush
Yes,
the
yeah, yeah.
process.
Sometimes I can, if I get so many photos, videos, I sometimes I can imagine something, but I never do sketch before. So I go there first.
And do you need to discuss, someone's reaction from somebody on your team, or do you feel confident that there is a certain direction that you want to take and you don't really discuss it with others? You make the decisions, at least initial decisions.
Yeah, at the later stage, we need a discussion. We need to carry on. We need to discuss what this sketch means. We need to, sometimes it's hard to describe. You have this reaction, you do some sketch, you have this image, but what this mean? You know, what's this the uniqueness of this reaction? You need to dive in and find out, and then you will have a principle of the project. The principle come later because the reaction come really fast, and then you need to understand it, and then after you fully understand yourself and the principle, you can carry on this principle to detailed designs.
What does it really mean when you say, I want each of my projects to look different every time?
I just I know I just feel that's not exciting to if you repeat, I want each design process is a new journey, some adventure. So you will face some difficulties and the new challenges and doing something unknown and expected. So I I was, looking for some adventure as a journey. So I also think each place deserve a unique solution.
And then I like your quote. You said, I think it is important to practice architecture with an attitude. So, what would you say it really means to have an attitude for an architect?
Atti Attitude to many issues, like because each architecture answer actually responding to many issues like history, cultural, people, and future. Like what's the future? That's all almost to every project. If you do a building, how this related to your culture, your past, what this related, what's the future should be, and what about this tree next to your building? There's many big questions, small questions, and you should responding to that, and that shows your attitude. So I think architecture, um, it, it's a it's a it's a lot of judgment decisions based on your values. Your so of course that the designers and the people you work with, you have a values. You shows those values through architecture. That's why also I disagree a lot of buildings in our cities because I don't agree with their values. Um, that's why when I do a train station in China, only did one train station. I make it uh, a green space and the main space underground. So instead of maybe it's not unique in Europe or in other country, but in China that's unique because of many train station in China, they're like a huge palace, like a big building, like a grand buildings, and I totally disagree with those values. So that's the attitude I meant.
You said architecture is art, attitude, and emotions. All these things need to be linked. If you could talk about how you linked all of those in your George Lucas Museum of Narrative Arts, which is, I understand, is going to open really, really soon.
Next year,
Oh,
hopefully.
next year. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you work on linking all of those attributes?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. That's a cultural institution. It's a building about the narrative arts. It's about the storytelling, bring people together. So that's a perfect example. Architecture should um, be a place for people to like to go and to see other people, to be together, to share and share their stories. It's inspired by the trees, the canopy, it's a floating structure. It's like a tree canopy providing shading, this also it's futuristic uh to attract young people to students from the schools, for example. They they should, when they look at this building, they should be curious about what's inside, what the building, what the story is they're telling, and they will be here. So I think yeah, the also the art, it's a building about art, but it's different from the contemporary art museum. Most of them trying to be really elite, hard to understand, and sometimes the contemporary art is, I think it's too, I don't know, it's sometimes they're trying to be commercial, but at the same time to have a distance from people. Like people don't understand, but they think, oh, this is famous, so they must be some value. Uh, but our museum, it's more about the stories about the people. Um, so the exhibition, George Lucas is doing that. It's for everyone to understand. Even you have no knowledge about art history. You can tell what this is about. It's about the basic values of human being, the love, the family, your friends, all this. Um, it's like Qi Baishi's painting, it's you can touch real human. At the same time, you have your own space to imagine things.
I also have this publication about this year's Chinese Pavilion that you curated. If I were to compare the Chinese Pavilion exhibitions in recent years to the current one that you designed, the change is quite dramatic. So if we go back to 2018, there was a major exhibition of 60 projects built all over China in cities where cities that many Westerners never heard about. And this was a kind of declaration that China finally has arrived. So there were many, many projects and mostly buildings. And then 2 years ago, there was again a major show where many Chinese architects were represented. So this is very different this time, the exhibition that you brought. If you could talk about your main idea and what were some of the intentions behind your show?
I think fewer people is more powerful. It's a more for people to remember. I wanted to have even less people, but seems it's hard because I understand the other previous exhibition why they have so many projects because in China is so big and the context is quite complex. If you want to show more real situation around the China in different region, you need a project. You need to show more. So I found that it's challenging to show the what's the real challenges uh, with the fewer projects. But I also understand the platform in Venice is not just about the showing off. It's it's more about um, ideas and exchange ideas. So so I think for this show this year, we wanted to have a fewer people, fewer projects, and most of them are younger generation. And the way they're showing the issues, the projects are more uh, uh it's more about ideas. It's not the projects. It's not the buildings. So so each project um, they they're discussing the urban issues, social issue, or architecture issue by creating some installation. So it's not models. So I think by doing installation, it's a more interactive to people. So people without background even they can sort of feel what you want to say. So that way, the exhibition is more understandable for normal people. Yeah, so that's the idea.
Could you talk about your own contribution to this installation, specifically your Chinese paper umbrella? So
Oh,
it's a kind of flower or dome structure outside
Yeah,
the
I
pavilion?
would. Yeah, I would include my pavilion with the traditional part of the category because we're using this oil paper. The material they did the umbrellas in the past because it's paper is a really you know uh, reusable material. They're very easy to make, and then they put the oil so it's waterproof. And we make it so big, make a pavilion, and hanging from the top. You see the structure is like hanging from the top, and so the whole structure feels like floating above the ground, and people can go in there and to use the space as a as the shelter or like a pavilion for people to sit down and discuss, doing something in there. So I think it's a new form, a new function, but by using old technique and old material. So I think that's also showing how I understand the term intelligence because I don't think high technology is a intelligence because intelligence people talk about AI and things like that. I think in the future, technology should only serve people's emotion. So I think what how people feel and how people um, uh, react to a place, that's more important. And only in the current time, in the modern time, post-industrial time, people think technology is itself is important. But for the future, I think humans reception is more important. But you want technology to serve that, but not showing off the technology itself. So it means it's not about competition of technology, faster, stronger. It's not about that. But sometimes you can use old technology, old material, sometimes new material, new technology, or you can combine them. You know, it's a, but the goal is to create certain atmosphere or space or things like that. So I think that's why I this time I chose using this very old material. But really, I think it really works. It's cheap. It's very light. It's easy to transport and recyclable. Yeah.
I really like your quote. You said, when I think about the city, I imagine not a structure, but an organic environment. If you could talk a little bit about that, and it seems like most of the installations or all of the installations, they really talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's also inspired from my observation of traditional cities. Beijing, for example, the city center was lakes and the mountains, all these nature things, and and of course people can use them as a public space, as a parks, but also as an ecosystem that really works. You have a high density city and also you have a nature, and this nature was also plant as a huge garden. It's not a wild nature. It's not, it's not just live there and the trees and the green. It's a garden. It's a mountain, a pagoda, and a lake. So it's kind of a beautiful and a poetic. I think that's a this both quality, nature quality and spiritual quality. They're both important for people live in the city. Yeah, so I think that's a balance. So come down to architecture. I think each parcel we need to consider this balance as well, nature and man-made. Yeah, so that's what I meant to make an ecosystem more than individual buildings.
You are very critical of the latest building developments in China. You said, I don't like what has happened to our cities now. This is the result of us having followed modernism for such a long time. Everything has started to look the same and lacks an inner spirituality. Nowadays,
Mm,
function is prioritized over nature and emotions.
yeah.
What do you think about the current moment in architecture, and how do you view this both in China and globally?
I think I think we need to look at the whole system as a whole, not the only buildings, because in the old master plan, people um, focus more on creating spaces and density, space for people. So we think human is the center, and architecture serve people. So we build buildings and buildings and buildings. We forget about the spaces in between buildings. So, but as I mentioned, in the old traditional Chinese cities, for example, gardens, the nature and artificial are coexist, and they're balanced. They're half and half. In the city, urban planning scale is the same. Uh, like Hangzhou, like Beijing, Nanjing, all this city, and I think they were beautiful. Those cities are beautiful, and that there's some quality that we're missing now in modern big city. The spaces, the in between buildings, and maybe we should turn our focus from away from the physical building, but more towards what's really what people needs, other than the spaces, the interior spaces. The nature, meeting other people to find the beauty, or even the what's architecture can do, what the gardens can do is to create poetic, spiritual spaces for people. So that's why they build a city. They want to live in there because they know they can create a beauty, and not just shelters, right? So I think that quality is totally missing in modern cities, in everywhere in China. China, because of China built so fast, and so that's why they have to copy the buildings uh, everywhere, so they look the same, and there's no time to create. And in other places, same. I think in the Middle East, for example, they realize that the building cannot be too much same, so they start to do landmark buildings. But when you have all different landmark buildings, it's become chaos sometimes. It's every building look different. So what I mean um, by creating this um, uh, to avoid this all same look city, is through the planning, not just architecture. You can make every building more beautiful, but that's the same. That's only still focus only on the buildings. So what I meant was you should look at the city as an environment. And inside this environment, for example, it's like a big garden. We consider the city like a garden.
When I'm listening to you, I am thinking about, for example, cities like New York, which is in the last couple of decades really reinvented itself and put a lot of attention to the rivers, and is building so many new parks, and really
Yeah,
infusing a lot of
yeah,
energy and nature and public spaces. So I don't know, it created over the last 15, 20 years quite a few very dynamic, very open, very popular, beautiful
yeah,
spaces.
yeah. That was really something really good. I think the city transformed from industrial and high density strong buildings to some more human, more nature, and they focus more on the waterfront and the highline parks, for example. All this really, really nice. Yeah. And also they have a history. So it's there's some, you can, for example, Highline was unique because they reused some the older structure to transform. But what if you in China you have so many new cities. So finding the cultural uh, connection also important.
I recently watched your discussion or interview with Peter Eisenman, uh, and he told you that it is important to develop a Chinese model for architecture, and he also said that you are the one who can do it. So, are you working in that direction? And what could that be? A Chinese model for architecture?
You know, I know some people are expecting that, but I'm not. I don't think things like that way. I never think I want to representing China because I think I could be one special or independent figure in China cultural landscape. But I think in that landscape we should have a many different voice instead of like one voice to representing what's a China model. China is very diverse, and also I feel I always looking for something different and new. Um, but I understand Peter. I was also thinking about a similar thing. Actually, more than 10 years ago, I started to talk about the Shanshui city, Shanshui architecture. I think that somehow is about that. It's about, to telling our colleagues what I think about this architecture should be and the direction that everyone could possible also try. Um, yeah. But now I think I still feel that voice should be more personal. Common interest should be about something we showed in this China Pavilion. Maybe I think that's more about the common interest, like the tradition and the future. What's a relationship? I think that's almost touch on every architect's practice, like in China. Like they all influenced by this modernism, and they also know uh, this cultural origin, right? So what this from Liang Sicheng, from 100 years ago, this is already a discussion, but still now you see some uh, new Chineseness, new Chinese architecture, but it's not there yet. It's not I say not so much influential in the global scene. So what this tradition means or can be beneficial to the rest of the world, I think that's yet to be discovered. Uh, so I think I see many in different generation, yeah, Chinese architects, they're more or less talk about this topic, this tradition, how they understand tradition, how they think about the future. I think this could be the common challenge, uh, or movement. In the future, like everyone will have their say about this topic, and that could be strong. The as like Peter's uh, saying, as outsider, when you observe this whole architecture society in China, you will you will see it. They will tell their understanding about the tradition, what they observe, what they gain, what the value they get. and their imagination about the future. I think that's it. That's common and that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think you are talking about the fact that it's not necessary to be ideological. It's more important to be personal and really express personal emotions as opposed to figuring out what's the right way of doing this or that and going in that direction as a nation or as a region. And I think China has shown a particular model, but it's probably now mature enough to try to be very diverse and different and individualistic. And that's probably what you are trying to be, not to show everyone what's the way, but to show what one way could be.
Exactly. I think when the voice, the source of voices are limited, people think, oh, that's a voice. That's a, that's about the China or anything. But when you truly know the complexity and the and and the many different voices, you know the real situation, and that's important. And the many voices are also equal important. Uh, I think right now it's like that. It's not the the voice is not limited because the internet, everything, social media, reports, everything. So everyone knows things more and better, more clear. So so I think diversity is more important, more meaningful. Like looking for some new, especially for younger people, for new generation. Otherwise, they will follow if the mainstream is too powerful, right? But if they feel the freedom to express, that's more better.
Finally, I want to ask you, what can you say about the progression of your ideas expressed in your buildings? You already mentioned that you want to try to be different every time. How do you see your architecture developing? So not only trying different ideas, but in a way, maybe going into a particular direction. What's the near future is like for your work?
Maybe more social. I feel um I feel my architecture always trying to be very natural and artistic, but at the same time responding to urban issues, which is really showing the social issues as well. Um, so I find my architecture trying to be not just uh, artistic, but more social, means maybe more decentralized, or because most landmark building trying to be centralized. So I'm trying to do that. More and also more care about the material, maybe um the natural material, everything, this environmental things. That's I think also social because it's in different places it means different because in the city, like most Western people think the sustainability or everything is it's based on very expensive buildings in the cities. But if you practice in countryside or more poor cities, it's a different situation. So as I mentioned in the earlier, the what I understand about uh, intelligence in the future, that the technology is not the only about high technology. So I'm trying to be more responding to those issues. Um, and I always trying to practice in different country. I think that's a special about us. Right? Still not many Chinese architects go other country, Western country, or now I'm also doing in South America. I'm
Oh,
trying to
where?
do
Where?
uh uh São Paulo and yeah, and other Quito, you know, and also Japan and Europe and America, maybe Africa. I'm hoping to go there. So I think I'm trying to. I think that's my interest to do architecture to get involved in other people's life. I don't know. I don't know. I try to because I've experienced many difficulties, you know, around around people that I know near me, but but eventually I understand other people also experiencing the similar challenges or difficulties. I try to help.
So in a way, you offer in your perspectives, but also you try to learn, how in different regions around the world people live and do other things, and see how your architecture can adapt to that, but also benefit from that, and maybe even get ideas from different circumstances, I guess.
Exactly. That's the beauty of doing architecture. You know, you go understand other people and you know through this process, you really understand each other and then learn things as well.